and welcome to a review video. In this video we're going to be talking about the section of the notes labeled Compatibilist Theories of Free Will. So broadly, there are three categories that they end up falling into, or three parts. The first we talk about is desire theory. Second, we talk about one particular version of deep self views. So that's terminology introduced by the final writer, Wolff. However, it is an umbrella that would encompass higher order desire theory, which is Frankfurt's theory, where he's adding to desire theory. Wolff uses introduces the sane deep self view, which is again, kind of taking from deep self views, the one that we talk about being Frankfurt's, acknowledging its merit, and then, again, adding to it. So that's kind of the progression of how this is going to go. So starting with desire theory, so that would just mean freedom is the power to do what you want to do. Pretty simple. First thing you can think about, I want to drink water. So you can have that desire. A cat can also have that desire. I want to read a book. I want to steal. Those are different desires you could have, and freedom would be the power to act on them. So on this view, cats are free in the same way that humans are free. You can both do things such as drink water. Most of the time probably, unless there's some kind of restriction, in which case maybe you wouldn't be free. So something to think about, again, this is pretty simple, but a problem case that we come up with is, so for example, in the I want to steal case, the desire, yes, is held by this guy who's pickpocketing this other guy, the desire, I want to steal. However, imagine he's brainwashed into stealing. So yes, he has the desire to steal. However, he's brainwashed by a cult leader, or maybe even more obviously, a mad scientist is controlling his brain, putting the desire, I want to steal, into it. Most of us would say he's not free. However, desire theory, as long as his desire is to steal, and in which case it would be, no matter how that desire got there, would say that this guy is free in acting so. So Frankfurt wants to add to desire theory in order to maybe resolve this problem. So we learn that one can act on a desire, like your desire to steal, without being fully responsible for doing so. So if they're brainwashed or the victim of a mad scientist experiment, they're probably not responsible. So Frankfurt adds on to desire theory by putting forth the higher order desire theory, which is freedom is the power to act on the desire that you want to act on. So to do this, we kind of outline two kinds of desires. The first kind of desire is first order desires, which is a desire to act in a particular way. Your desire to drink water, to read a book, to watch TV. And a person's will is the first order desire that causes them to act. So you will to drink water, and then you do drink water. You will to read a book when you have the desire to read a book, and that's what you end up doing. And then the other kind of desire is second order desire. So unlike first order desires, which many non-human animals also have, like the cat's desire to eat food or to drink water, second order desires are more specific to humans as free agents, I guess. And again, there are two kinds of second order desires. The first kind is the desire to have a first order desire. So humans, critical of reflection, or with the ability to reflect in this way, might think, I don't have that desire, but I desire to have that desire. I'll give you an example for me personally. That is the desire to want to learn math, the desire to learn math, or I guess in my case, math beyond the level that I had to learn to get by in school. I don't want to learn more math. Thought of doing it, I don't like it. I don't want to. However, I want to. I desire to have that desire, although I don't have it, actually. You can think of an example for yourself as well. And slightly different second order volition, that's a type 2 of second order desires. So a desire for some first order desire to be your will. So with first order desires, one thing you can think about is they can conflict. So maybe your desire to read or to watch TV at one moment in time, those are conflicting. I mean, I guess you could kind of try to do both, but if you're like reading, if you're properly reading, you're probably not watching TV. Maybe an even more straightforward example would be to read a book or to go to sleep. So you can have multiple first order desires, as in maybe I'm sitting in bed on the weekend and I desire to watch a movie, but I also desire at the same point in time to read a book. So second order volition, a desire for some first order desire to be your will, or in other words, a desire for some first order desire to be the one that causes you to act. So when I'm sitting in bed on my day off, I have the desire to watch a movie, or maybe use the case of going to bed, just taking a nap, that one's even more straightforward. So I have the desire to take a nap. I also have the desire to read this book, to read a book. And I desire for my desire to read this book to be my will. I have preference over which desire ends up causing my action, and I desire for it to be my desire to read this book. Again, I want to do both, but I would rather act on my desire to read the book. So again, you can think of, maybe that's you with studying. You think, I want to study because it would help me a lot in the long term right now, or I could take a nap. And you want to study because you know it would be good for you, and you know it would make you feel a lot better, relieve some stress, and you want that to be the desire that ends up being your will instead of your desire to take a nap, for example. And again, you can also think, you can't even you can't get here without first having the desire. So, in this, for this first one, you just don't even have that desire in the first place. For the second order volition aspect of second order desires, you have to already have that desire, and then furthermore want it to be your will. So maybe you just don't have the desire to study at all. In which case you might have the desire to study. Yeah. So this falls under what Wolff calls deep self views, which broadly defined by the premise, a person is free when their will is controlled by their deep self. So in this case, you can think of like the deep self or the actual self as maybe kind of what the role of second order desires are fulfilling. So the second order desire is like maybe more representative of your deep self or your actual self. You have preference over the kind of desires that you end up willing, and that's reflective of your deep self. And again, Frankfurt's higher order desire theory falls under the category of deep self views, along with a few other views, but we don't talk about them in this class. So, and one intuitive and good thing about where Frankfurt has taken us from just plain desire theory alone to adding this deep self or second order desire aspect is to account for example, cases of addiction, where we want to say that someone who's an unwilling addict, as in they have the second order desire to not take the drug. So they desire to act on the desire not to take the drug. In terms of first order desires, they have both the desire to take the drug and the desire to not take the drug. Their second order desire is that the desire is the desire to act on the desire not to take the drug. Even though they both want to and don't want to. At the end of the day, because of addiction, they end up taking the drug anyway. So this is an example that at least Frankfurt, and I think many people would agree, the unwilling addict is not free. Because one way to put it, you could put it in a few ways, the force moving their action is the drug, not themselves or their deep self. There's some kind of, there's not an alignment between their second order desires or their deep self and their actual actions. We bring up the example of the willing addict. The willing addict has the same thing. They have the desire to take the drug and the desire to not take the drug. However, their second order desire is the desire to act on the desire to take the drug. I have a preference to act on that one. That's the one I want to act on, and they take the drug anyway. There's an alignment, at least, between their second order desire and their actual actions. They line up. Whereas in the case of the unwilling addict, that's not the case. There's misalignment, and they're not free. So we have that laid out. That's of the deep self views. That's the one specific example is the higher order desire theory. But Wolff presents an example to deep self views, DSVs, on the whole. Again, for us, what's important is that it also applies to Frankfurt's higher order desire theory. So this is going on the internet, so we'll keep this fictional. Jojo's this is Jojo. Jojo's the son of a dictator. He is groomed to take over power. He's heavily indoctrinated his whole life. He's kept in the palace. He's kept within a small circle. He's never exposed to dissenting opinions. He believes that murdering dissenters and outsiders and whatnot is the right thing to do. He was told that this is the right thing to do. This is what his father did when he takes over power. That's what he does. So, in Jojo's case, with all this severe indoctrination, maybe he even thinks, like, is this the right thing to do? And he's not stupid. He has an understanding of morality and right and wrong. You know, if he's being introduced to the idea that this is the right thing to do, he has some kind of idea of the right thing to do. So he might think, is this the right thing to do? Is it actually the right thing to do? And he's like, yeah. And given all of this heavy indoctrination, yeah, that's what he settles on. His deep self identifies with the desire to murder. And his will is that he wants to murder because he was always taught and fully believes that it's the right thing to do. And the resulting action is murder. So again, there's alignment from his deep self to his will, his desire, and his actual action. His deep self is in alignment with his action. However, the question is Jojo free? You might have a different assessment of this. However, Wolff's assessment is no. And part of the reason is that anybody raised in Jojo's position would be the same way. It was almost unavoidable that, like, given these circumstances and given the mental state he's been indoctrinated into, how could he possibly believe anything else or do anything else? So that's basically that part of Wolf's assessment as to why, and I think quite a few people would agree with this, is to say JoJo is not fully, at least, and maybe not at all, or maybe just leave it plain, JoJo's not free or responsible for what he does in the murdering, even though there's this alignment between his deep self and his actions. If you were in this position too, raised the same way JoJo was, you would end up doing the same. Anyone would. So that's part of the reason. So, again, taking the merits of the deep self views, but acknowledging those merits, but maybe saying that because of this counterexample, we found them to be insufficient, Wolf adds another condition. And interestingly, this condition isn't based on adding another element of control, but rather an element that's probably outside of, or that is outside of the person's control. So the sane deep self view, which is Wolf's view, a person is free when, one, their deep self controls their will. Again, the deep self views, including Frankfurt's, they agree with this first part. And, this is Wolf's addition, they're sane. And broadly, sane, she uses sane to mean they know what they're doing and they know that what they're doing is right or wrong. And another way to think about this, reality is guiding the deep self. So the deep self desires, or the second order desires and the first order desires, are based in an understanding of reality, in this case moral reality, instead of all these fabrications. In JoJo's case, this understanding is based in fabrications and lies and indoctrination. Wolf is a moral objectivist, so reality, so she would believe that there's such a thing as moral reality, and that is what the guidance of the deep self needs to be based in. Moral reality, like knowing that what you're doing is right or wrong, instead of being removed from it and indoctrinated and lied to. Even if you're not really sold on moral objectivism, I still think it's pretty fair to say that it's pretty clear that what JoJo's doing is wrong, and it's also pretty clear that he does not know that what he's doing is wrong, for probably pretty valid reasons because of this indoctrination. In fact, he believes it's right. And I also think it's pretty clear that he's wrong in thinking it's right, and that most of us can agree on that, even if we're not fully sold on moral objectivism. So that's it for this video, and yeah, thank you for watching.